Hello, my name's Austin Alsante, and today I have a very special holiday gift for all of you. Now, there have been many movies made across the past 7 months, including Jack, Charlie, and heck, even a little bit of me sometimes. But today, I think through all these stories, I think it's finally time I really uncover exactly how this story is laid out. So, let's get into it. We start off with Dr. Martin. Now, Dr. Martin was first seen in Morbius, but she was the first in the many history of this story. Now, as a scientist, she tried to experiment with different dimensions, and eventually she found a dimension where they would have sort of a doppelganger of every person in the world, but they had a thing of like insanity. This was very important because she would take out a DNA sample of a normal person, put it in the machine, and eventually a person with an insanity from the dimension would come out. And as well, the first test subject from this was Austin Alsante. Going through different trials both mentally and physically, he overall was able to be kept. Test subject 2 was Logan. Now, in the video, he is known as Fartman, but the thing about him is he provided some actual words to talk about it. In fact, if you look at the description, the transcript, it is in Spanish, and he says many variable things or whatever, but there's one thing that he says in particular. Now, although it's in Spanish, you see, as a person who takes Spanish in a class, I can easily go to Google Translate, and I find out that one of the words he said was "Que conmigo, Martin." Think about that, as in English, that means "what with me, Martin." You can definitely sense that he was experiencing immense pain during those trials. Later in that time, you can also see from the Charles Styles video that he had one goal in mind, and that was to eliminate Charles Styles. Now, he would do this by gouging the eyes out and replacing his face as a mask. Something that you'll notice later on is a trend in this sort of thing. 4 subjects were Gabriella and John Jack. So the thing about these subjects is that both of them sadly escaped from the lab. Now, Gabriella, turns out her goal was to capture Finn Wolfhard. As a result, she went on mass shootings and mass killings simply just to obtain Finn Wolfhard. Now, for the dimensioned John Jack at this time, it's not sure what he did when he escaped. After the events of the Finn Wolfhard movie and the escapees of John Jack and Finnerita, immediately Dr. Martin ordered all shutdown of all portal activity and any science experiments that had to do with such portal. After the orders were to get rid of everything, Victor Frankenstein had different thoughts on these subjects. There were 4 subjects now laid out. There was Insane Austin, who was now in captivity. There was Insane Logan, who was still in captivity. Gabriella was nowhere to be found at this point, as well as John Jack was nowhere to be found either. Now, there was a 5th DNA sample that never got used because of the shutdown. That one was Mr. Gatsby. Going onwards, we have 2 different trees of storylines. First is of John Jack, and the second is of Charlie. Now, out of these 2, I will be doing Charlie's tree first, and then going on to the John Jack storyline. The storyline begins with Mr. Gatsby. At this point, he was a normal person. He was a ruler of a high school, and he even tried out for the NFL Combine, and did very well. He was more of an upward person, as you could say. At this point, the events of the Great Gatsby occurs, as tragically Mr. Gatsby ran over the wife of someone, in which he was shot several times. This led to his eventual death. After his death, Victor Frankenstein was able to recover the body from the burial site and able to use that DNA to revive him from the dead. After Gatsby was reanimated, he then went on a killing spree after Frankenstein would not let him have another female reanimation. After this, he escaped Victor Frankenstein's hands and moved on to other things. The events of Morbius take place as Mr. Gatsby has now traveled across the world and has been hospitalized. Now, the thing when he was hospitalized is his new sort of goal changed. This changed from finding a mate to finding blood, as he morbs over blood. Now, eventually, this morb over blood led to him meeting Dr. Martin. Dr. Martin was unaware this was a test subject that she was dealing with, and did have a love interest. In fact, she tried to help him when she found out he was a tough subject, and decided to offer him a lab. Now, this was not taken lightly, and sadly, he was on a rampage and killed as much as he could, including his friend Milo. The thing is, though, he also killed Dr. Martin. At least we thought so, until we find out that for some reason, somehow, she is still alive. Events of American Psycho, where he slowly becomes more human, but is still a deranged person behind. In his thoughts, he starts to think like evil things and terrible, horrible things. Eventually, it eats him up, and frankly, he ends up mass murdering many people, only for him to eventually be caught. And after he's caught, he has to go into hiding after this. This hiding includes a video of him doing carpool karaoke, which is very beautiful, I do have to admit myself. But this carpool karaoke consists of basically showing his sort of loneliness that he is in this hiding. We don't know how long he was in here for, but it changed him a lot. Now, once he is in hiding, the thing with him now is that it's possible that he may have been cured, just like how Gabriella was 6 years later, because he is showing signs of complete difference than he was in American Psycho. In this place, he takes place in Gotham. Now, the thing about him is he has a rule of no killing. Now, this is completely opposite to what he was before. This could have mean that he could have been cured. That was a dark plot in between. We're not exactly sure. However, one thing he knows is he has turned to good for some reason. Now, the main thing about Batman is he also accidentally called himself Patrick Bateman. Shows that he still sort of messes up on which persona he is trying to portray at this point. As well as this, the one thing that really questions is the Joker. The Joker wears a Psyche Scrambler's mask. The question is, what affiliation does the Joker have with this mask? What association does he have with John Jack? And what does this exactly mean? Well, that was the Charlie storyline. Now we took over to the other side of the story, the John Jack storyline. Now, with this storyline, a lot of the basis from Charlie's storyline also depicts onto Jack's storyline as well. I should point that out. So, let's start with the John Jackumentary. John Jackumentary consists of the origin of John Jack. It depicts a normal kid living a normal life with a few extra crazy stuff that happens, but overall nothing too suspicious. As well, it goes along with the Legends of Zartan video, which talks about greed upon many people, showing a sort of innocence among themselves. However, things change when we go to the French house tour. You see, when he goes to give his new house of the French house tour, there's something else in there, in the house. There is already another John Jack. During this new house tour, John Jack eventually, off camera, finds out there is another John Jack there. This John Jack is the one that escaped the lab all those years ago. Now, this is Insane John Jack, and there's now Normal John Jack. There's two of them. So they decide to team up, and they decide to do something very, very important. The hollow face illusion. Face illusion depicts illusion as sort of mesmerized many people. Now, the thing about them is they decided to do it together. However, there's one thing in the way. Insane Austin, which was kept in captivity, was now sent by Dr. Victor Frankenstein to go and capture Insane John Jack. His motives are not yet sure on what he's doing, but he has sent Insane Austin to do so. And such, Insane Austin goes to capture Insane John Jack, but instead captures normal Jack in the beginning. The thing is, though, Insane Austin is not exactly sure if he captured the right Jack. So he sticks around, spies on Insane John Jack, works with him, even collaborating him when trying to kidnap Nick. There's one thing he says that's very important. I miss her so goddamn much. John Jack, when talks about this girl when about to capture Nick, is he talking about Dr. Martin? Is he talking about someone else? Who is this her that he is talking about? Maybe it's his cousin. We don't know. We may not know who this girl really is. We do know that he captured Nick. And we're not exactly sure what happened after Insane Austin terrorized him at the end of the interview. However, afterwards, Austin's sort of thought that he captured the wrong Jack was right, and he ended up at the end figuring out he needed to capture Insane John Jack, and thus he captured him at the end. Afterwards, he let the normal John Jack go, and that's where we start from here now. The normal John Jack then went on to do the rest of his things, He went to Pizza Review 1, we had this Home Banger video, which we might infer that John Jack's friend is a porn star. We're not exactly sure, but context clues say so. The next thing is we have Pizza Review 2. All these pizza reviews have become sort of a little mini-series within the series. It's honestly a great trilogy that I found entertaining. I'm sure he did as well. Then we have the Hardcore Henry recap by a psychopath. Although this might be psychopath, as it says, it might actually be normal John Jack just talking the crazy way he does. The one thing at the end of Hardcore Henry is that at the end he gets a phone call. Normal John Jack gets a phone call. That's very important. Remember that. Now, in the Safe Sex PSA, this is where John Jack ends up meeting normal Austin. The regular Austin in today's world meets him in college, and they honestly have a great adventure. And this adventure takes place in Boston. Don't do drugs. Anyways, so then we have that was Pizza Review 3, and eventually we move on to Movie Pass. Now, Movie Pass is interesting. I'll tell you why. In Movie Pass, there's one big thing that comes up, and that's Charlie. Now, as is known as, I'll call him Patrick Bateman in this stance. Why does he know Jack? He was seen masturbating in the American Psycho movie to the Psyche Scramblers. So the question is, does he have any affiliation with them? Does he sort of envy them? We're not exactly sure. What we do know is that at the end, you can see Insane John Jack near the captivity area that he was placed. Gets a call too. Just like how normal Jack got a call, he got a call as well. We're not sure who was calling, and we still don't know. However, there's another piece of information in the Movie Pass movie, and that is that during one of the scenes, you can see Insane Austin on the phone call. It is assumed that he is calling Insane John Jack to ask where the paddles were. The installment of this storyline so far involves Austin Alsante, the insane one, going to the door of Insane John Jack's captivity area. Insane John Jack answers. Insane Austin proceeds to sort of suffocate John Jack, asking where the paddles are. Eventually, he interrogates him, and John Jack disagrees that there are no paddles. There are no paddles in the area. So Austin Alsante, with his mega ADHD, decides to forget about it and just play ping pong with Insane John Jack. They play ping pong, But later in the ping pong playing area, something goes wrong, and the reality itself, the sound, the vibrations are distorting. No one's really clear on what happens, and no one can even tell what was going on. The real question is, did both of them escape? Did none of them? Or did someone? We don't know. I want to thank you for spending time with me to come check out this lore that we have experienced so far in the storyline. Again, there is a chance I could be wrong, but I will do everything I can to find out what this lore really means. Thank you for watching, and thank you, Jack.